Julie Crosby. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks so much for joining us.
The viewpoints expressed in this program are the opinions of the people expressing them and are not necessarily those of Fresh Air Incorporated, its staff, or its board of directors.
With my audio, I think. I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to the conversation with Al McFarlane. Glad to be here and glad to have you along as well. Pardon the delays of getting started, working my technology and making it work. Today is Tuesday, December 13th, and I'm pleased to have at the opening of the show my friend, I haven't seen him in a long, long time, Bruce A. Henry. Brother Bruce, how you doing, man?
Nice to see you.
It's nice to see you. Are you here now or in Chicago still?
No, I'm back home. I'm in Chicago.
Okay, but you're going to be here shortly, right?
I will be there. I'll be flying in Friday night. I have a show at the Dakota on Saturday.
That's going to be wonderful. I haven't seen you in so long. Tell us what you've been doing for the past several years out of Chicago.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, one of the things is, along with my career as a jazz vocalist, I sing frequently in churches. and equal, I spent an equal amount of time doing my musicology gig, the evolution of African American music. So that has continued to grow in my life, where I teach the curriculum and perform the curriculum of 400 years of African American music. Been doing that regionally, nationally, a lot later. And if that wasn't enough, I became a community gardener, the manager of a community garden, an urban farm. So
okay.
busy.
What's the connection between community gardening and African American musicology, African musicology?
Well, one connection is, well, you definitely need to improvise to keep a garden to keep a garden growing. And I found that I literally fell into being a leader of a community garden. And I was invited to do this by a community leader on the South Side. And I was a member of a large committee, and I was the least knowledgeable person as far as farming in that group. But one thing I do know how to do is I know how to do a gig. I know how to come in on schedule and on time and on budget. So those music skills transferred to managing this garden.
And so the vision and the mission of the garden is what?
Well, what we do with we're in, one of those Chicago food deserts. There's so many of them. And I was raised in, the city calls it West Pullman. We call it Maple Park. Maple Park at one time was the largest all new Black community in America. About 5,000 of us moved in the 60s in about a 2-3 year period.
Newly built community.
Brand new. We're the only 2 or 3 models of all the houses. So that over the years, that there's a lot of hunger over the years. There's a lot of hunger in that community. So the church that is affiliated with the garden, they feed hundreds of people a week. So what we do with we're trying to encourage people, one, to be outside, one, to commune with nature, to be connected. So we're trying to be land connectors. But so everything we grow, we hand right to the church feeding programs, or to seniors, particularly seniors who are nearby. So, yeah.
Okay. And so musicology. I remember you doing your history of Black music here in Twin Cities. Tell me about that. What was the motivation for it, and how is that still being received in our community as a tool of enlightenment, of connection, and of awareness?
Well, yeah, for me, like I love to learn, and I'm excited about sharing what I learned. So I've always had a passion for history, and that ran simultaneously with music. And my father encouraged that with me when he would discuss ancient military history with me at the earliest of ages. So history, a lot of people may not know, that is an equal passion of mine. There's so many discoveries as I study and promote the history of African American music. So many lessons in there. One of them is when I look at West African music performances and early American African American roots performances. One of the lessons I try to impart to my audiences is the idea of democracy that flows through this vernacular music. The idea that the performance is part of a community, that communities are free to create together. You see that in the music of our ancestors. You see that in jazz. You see that in folk music. And it's something that we've lost, where music, in so many ways, music has become the realm of the specialist or the virtuoso, and we don't feel free as individuals to participate and create as a community. So that's one of the lessons that I'm trying to teach to all audiences when we discover this music. And also just the joy and how we use music as a survival mechanism, and continue to do that over these 400 years. So just a couple of the big lessons.
So how do you demonstrate that? What do you say about music as a survival tool in your presentation, in your lecture, and in your performance?
Well, it shows up. So when I did an evolution, I have a written curriculum. That's where all of this started from. A lifetime ago, it started with me writing a pamphlet for the Minneapolis Park System. And from that, so what I did was I broke it into 20 different stages. And one of the things that rose through that I noticed in study that the idea of using music as to build community survival runs through all these genres. You can clearly see it in the spirituals and the coded message songs and the ring shouts. You can clearly see that. But then you can see that trend of protest music and survival music running through all forms of music, of our music.
Okay. I'm thinking, checking my video here. Yeah, thought I lost it for a second. I remember, Bruce, I used to.
Hello?
Okay, let me. Hi, so we're back with the conversation with Al McFarlane. Apologies today. It looked like we're having a bit of tech difficulties. I think Al will be back in a minute. But in the meantime, Bruce, do you have what will you be singing this weekend? I know you're going to be performing.
Yes. Well, this weekend I will actually be performing music from my first solo. Where's there? First solo Christmas album CD. I've sung on a number of people's recordings as a guest artist, and I said I wanted to create a CD that my grandmother, not my grandmother, my grandkids, and my mother could sit down and listen to together. Sit down and listen to together and share memories and create future memories of Christmas together.
Yeah, I think that's very important because we know every year, especially around the holidays, right? There's something about having a tradition, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you're saying you created that. So is that like the genesis? Like, how did it all of a sudden, like, were you sitting in a space and then kind of like the words started coming to you, the music started coming to you? What was it that just kind of really helped you to kind of create this amazing like album?
Well, actually, so a lot of times my music, when I record jazz, jazz often has a limited market. Often, I wanted something that could reach everyone. So the songs on here, these are all classics,
Right.
all classics, all singable, except for one song I wrote. I took one left turn. I had to. So
Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead. No, continue.
The genesis of it actually was I have a friend / new fan here in Chicago. Miss Agnes is in her 90s, and she will get on public transportation and come see me all over the city.
Wow.
And she called me one day and says, "Do you have a Christmas album? It's Christmas. I feel like hearing Bruce Henry." And I looked over at my wife and I said, "Next Christmas, we will have a Christmas record."
Well, I'm going to put you on the spot for a bit. Do you
Yes.
mind singing a little bit of the original song that you sung on, that you have on your album?
Okay, it's a little different.
Okay,
It
we're ready.
has, okay, it's called "Look to the East." And so what I was doing was I was researching maybe something Appalachian, something Celtic, and I was just looking for the right song. And I said, well, why don't you just write one? So here it is, just a little bit of it. Since their time began, the prophets foretold that a child would be born to save our souls. The love in his heart would lead the way in a world full of darkness and dismay. Look, look, look to these. Look, look, look to these.
Wow. That is amazing. That is amazing. It's it is definitely that type of like song and just feeling that just really brings warmth to the holiday seasons, because oftentimes holiday seasons are pretty hard for people, right? So being able to have something that can kind of bring them out of the the sadness that they experience, just really does something to you. What do you hope that when people are listening to your music, they have some takeaways from? What do you want them to take away when they listen to you?
Well, one thing I want people to do, and then this is in all my performances, that's a very good question, but the one thing I want them to be free to feel, to go on a journey with feeling. Being an introvert, myself and dozens of years in the career have honed me to the point where now I can be on stage and freely express my joy and my pain.
Gotcha.
So I want to help lead people. It's okay to feel. It's okay to feel just out and out joy. It's okay to sit there in that chair and cry. So first of all, I want them to feel. And in this season, I mostly want them to feel joy. But we're going to, again, take some left turns too, because life is like that.
Exactly. Well, let me actually kind of do an introduction. We are here with KFAI radio station. We are having the conversations with Al McFarlane. Right now, Al is experiencing a bit of technical difficulties. So I hopped on and hopefully can continue with this amazing conversation. We have Bruce A. Henry, who's going to be actually performing at the Dakota on Saturday, correct?
Yes, Saturday night.
Okay, and for those who can see this, we are doing live streaming and we're also doing radio, but we're going to be doing, Bruce Henry is going to be performing I'll Be Home for Christmas on Saturday, December 17th at 7 p.m. So you definitely need to go check him out. He has the sultry voice of so many amazing jazz artists, and I know you guys will enjoy what he's singing and just bringing joy to the holiday season. So let me actually, while we're doing this, let's kind of check we want to welcome Michelle Madison, who has been supporting us at the conversation with Al McFarlane forever. I've seen her always on the stream, so I really appreciate you guys joining us. So Bruce, we're going to actually wrap the segment up, but is there something that you want to leave with our audience, our listening audience and our viewing audience for the holidays? I mean, you've already sung your amazing song, so if there's anything else you would like to say, that'd be great.
Well, I'd just like to say there are a few tickets there. I might be on, but I don't see anybody else.
Oh no, you're
okay.
On.
My bad.
Okay, you're on.
There you are. Okay. There are a few tickets left. Come see us. Our shows, if I must say so myself, they're always wonderful experiences. That's the goal, to have an experience. This won't be a gig like you would hear. It won't be the traditional music or instrumentation you might hear. So I think it'll be something unique. And if you're not in the holiday mood, hopefully we can help encourage that.
Wow. Well, again, thank you so much for hopping on. Al is back, so I'm going to hop off. I think, Al, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay.
See me okay? I apologize. My equipment and the backup equipment all went south on me, but that happens. It's all good.
Yes.
That's what you have good people around. Yasmin, thank you. And I just am comfortable that you were there to jump in and make this conversation go. Bruce, I'm not sure what I missed with you, but for me, Bruce, it's me and you, two old friends catching up. Yeah. That's really what this is all about. And for me to have a chance to tell you how much I adore you and your music and your mission, your work, your voice, the strength, the clarity. I think before I got bounced off, before I was recalling the Africa Suite, and I kind of don't remember the lyrics, but I remember the feeling of Africa is crying. Is that what the words were?
Africa cries. How can we rejoice when she's in pain?
Yeah. And when I had that as the opening of the show, people would call up saying, play that again. Let's hear it again, because it touched me and listeners at a place that was special in our soul and our heart. And it raised the question about our obligation to pay attention to what's happening in the world, to our people, and our people in Africa in particular. And so when you created that piece, what was your thought? What was on your mind? What was guiding you at the time?
Well, in that particular piece, that is the only time, and I've written a couple hundred songs or so. And it's the only time in my life that a song, it came to me from out of a dream. I woke up singing that. And then it's a very short lyrically. I mean, when we play it, we stretch it out. It can be 12 minutes, but it's very short lyrically. But I woke up with those words and melody intact. And then I sat down and I said, let's try to write a bridge, another chorus. And I said, why would you mess with something that came out of a dream?
Mm.
And so that it came from there, and it came from, you know, what I believe in. You know, I'm a Pan-Africanist. I try to remember my ancestors at all time. So living and future, they're with me all the time. And when I get a chance to express it in music, I take that chance. So that song is who I am, who I want to be, and it came from the dream world.
Do you remember the lyrics?
How can I rejoice when she's in pain? Africa will live to rise again. While the world is on and we deny, how can I be happy while she cries? Yeah.
That was it, man. It feels exactly the same. Let's talk about Africa and our Africanness. Motivated by that thought and by the sentiment of being a Pan-Africanist, where do you see our people and our challenges, our struggle in the world right now as African people?
Well, where I see and where I see it is in the need of a cultural revolution. I mean, and where I see it, so many. Okay, so how do we have economic issues? We have issues of violence in our cities, et cetera, et cetera. And for me, what a powerful tool in helping change the concept, our mindset, is the use of culture. Is use of culture. I mean, like our ancestors used culture to survive and to thrive and express their hopes for the future. I think we need to do that now. And with the commercialization of our music, and with a lot of the music that I hear coming out of the radio, is the exact opposite of building community. I'm not saying all music. I don't hate all of any kind of music. But a lot of music that I hear, it'd be very hard to build a black nation listening to some of that. So that's how I also see my role, is what are these principles and concepts, teaching these concepts of Black self-empowerment and creating a cultural unity through art, through music.
Well, Bruce, hang out with me. I want to bring in another voice and another colleague and friend. You might know him, Brother Repa. Do you know him by any chance?
I do.
Well, if he, Brother Repa, how you doing, man? Repa, do you hear me? If we can bring Brother Repa Mekha, and I have to have him make sure I'm saying the name properly, is joining us. He's with the leader of the Nexus Community Partners, I think is the full name of the organization. Brother Repa, how are you? And does he hear me? Do you hear me?
I don't think he hears you.
Okay. Yeah,
I see his image.
I see his image as well.
Okay.
Okay, we try to get that worked out. And so, what else can I ask you? What can you ask me? Let's turn this around. We haven't talked in a long time.
Well, okay, so I can ask you. Well, I don't know what I can ask you, but I know sincerely, I really want to say this to you. You know, I'm at this point in my career where one is I don't want people to write me out, because I'm still working and getting better as an artist. I study more than I did at any time in the past, but I'm also starting to think about my legacy. And my legacy, particularly in the Twin Cities, and a couple of things come to mind. One is, sincerely, is, you know, I've had some success. I can't have bitter grapes about how the Twin Cities treated me, but as far as institutionally, no one has done more for me and believed in me more than you and other members of the Black press.
Mm-hmm.
So I will never forget that. And having said that, one of the things that's on my mind, and maybe you've thought about this before, but the Black arts movement that was prevalent in the Twin Cities in the 1970s, late 1970s and early 80s, that I happened to was proud to be a part of, it's becoming forgotten history.
Mm-hmm.
So in many ways, it's the fruit of my heart. And when I look at history through the press, it didn't occur in the Twin Cities. So somehow, in some shape and form, maybe, hopefully, with people like yourself, that movement of music, dance, art, theater, and poetry can be remembered.
Let me see if we can get Brother Repa in again. Repa, can you hear us?
Select output.
Yeah, we hear you now, I think, brother. Yeah, we're working this out. Yeah. I think we can try to bring him in now if we can. I heard his voice a second ago.
I just tried
Brother Repa, we hear you. We see you and hear you.
internal speakers.
Yeah. But he's not hearing us. That's the problem. Okay, we'll work it out. We'll work it out. And so the Black Arts Movement, where do we need to go? What can we do? So I'm into, you might be familiar with it. I'm wearing this t-shirt, sweatshirt for a project called Narrative, right? Stand up here so you can see it.
Okay.
And Narrative is an online community that's being organized by, among others, Dr. Greg Carr and Dr. Karen Hunter. And she's a journalist and educator. He's an educator out of...
I'm a fan, yes.
So you know them, right? And they are creating a relationship in our community in the digital space where we have to and can imagine what we can do for each other and with each other. So the question is, in that vein, where do you see the Black Arts Movement going? Is there a new opportunity for the re-emergence of the Black Arts Movement? And how can the Black Arts Movement really draw in and elevate and support our young people? What do you think?
Well, I know there are young people there now who are doing similar activities. I can't remember their names right now. People, the first name that comes to my mind is like Shaw Gage.
Yep.
The first name that comes to mind. And I know there are other people that are doing it. What I would like to do is, connect the generations. That's what I would like to see. The first thing I like to see is to connect the generations. And it's still, I when I travel around and I do the evolution of African American music, I present it in so many ways. One of the ways I do it is I go into schools and I do a residency, and I get to see firsthand how little African Americans know. So the music to me is just it's really a guide to teach the history and the story of our struggle, but how little they know. And these are brilliant children who may or may not be doing well in school, but what they know about Black culture or Black music is criminal to me.
Really?
So it's criminal. So a Black Arts Movement could be part of that education, providing a supplementary education that's been missed by the school systems.
I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation with Al McFarlane. My guest is Brother Bruce Henry, artist extraordinaire, urban farmer, performing in a couple of days here at the Dakota in downtown Minneapolis and hanging out with me today. But I'm trying to bring in our other guests for today, and this Brother Repa, Mekha. We had some challenges with the sound earlier. Repa, are you there?
I can hear you and I can see you.
And now we can hear you. So good that we were able to work the technology out. Things were difficult all around today, but it always works out. Brother, good to see you. Thank you for being here. And I want to elevate you and your work. Your company, your organization is called Nexus Community Partners. And on your website, it says that Nexus Community Partners works at the intersection of community building and community development. I think that opens the door to continue the conversation that Bruce and I are having, that the three of us can have together about the notion of what it means to build community and what it means to develop community. So let me ask you, brother, make sure I'm saying your name properly. Repa, Mekha.
Yes. Mekha, yes.
Okay. And am I saying the last name properly as well?
Yeah, and both are, it's almost as if there's an H on the end. Repa.
Repa. Mekha, great name. And I'm going to ask you to talk about that name you told me before, but it's a wonderful, wonderful awareness that comes with the name you've chosen and have been given. And I want to talk about that as well. But first, talk about Nexus. What's the work, the mission, the vision of the Nexus organization?
Well, Hotep, and good to be with you. May the ancestors guide my words, my thoughts, my deeds, and my direction. I've been with Nexus for about 15 years. Actually, in June of this year, it was 15. Doesn't seem like 15, but because the time has passed so fast. Excuse me. We established ourselves as a community building intermediary. Well, we were first a community development intermediary. And we chose community building because of two things. One, the structure, the system, the kind of funding available for community development has been established. It could be better, but for a long time. But what we weren't seeing was intermediaries that were focused on the human, social, and cultural capital in community. And so we chose to focus in on that aspect of community building and see ourselves as one side of a two-sided coin, with community development on one side, and community building on the other side. And we value community development because we know place matters. It's just not location. It's just not geography. It's where people experience life, establish identity, develop deep roots. And so place is a critical component of our experience. But if we don't tap into and build on the human, social, and cultural capital in communities, then places get better and people get moved on, right? And so we see ourselves in that light. We work in 4 areas, and I'll touch down on them. One is in community. We do grant making in community. And when we do grant making, we provide resources, but we walk alongside organizations because we know that the systems and the experiences that those organizations will be up against require more than just money. Mm-hmm. They require relationships, they require leveraging, they require strategizing. And so we walk alongside folks. But the benefit to us is that in return, we get to hear some of the brightest, most promising ideas early on to shape the way that we do our work. And it's in community that we hold ourselves accountable. So that's our kind of base. The second space that we operate in is in philanthropy. We were one of the co-founders of the Northside Funders Group. It was a coalition of about 19, 20 foundations that were focused on North Minneapolis. We were the founder of the East Side Funders Group on the east side of St. Paul. And that too is a large number of foundations that directly focus on the east side of St. Paul. I've done work on the board of the Minnesota Council of Foundations. And then, I don't know if you've heard, but just recently we launched the Black Collective Foundation. And that's not Nexus work solely. That was a partnership between myself, Shonda Smith Baker, and Lulit Muller. And that came out of the environment after the murder of George Floyd and the uprising and so forth. And we challenged philanthropy to be different, to show up different, and to invest different. The other area that we are engaged in is community and economic development, but we come at it from a different angle. Most of the culturally based CDCs in the state of Minnesota, Nexus was its first funder or one of its first funders. So African Economic Development Center, Economic Development Solutions, Latino Economic Development Center, Northside Economic Opportunity Network, Black Women's Wealth Alliance, we were their first funders or one of their first funders on the front end. and again, helping to build the strength and capacity of those organizations to stand strong in their communities.
No, I wasn't aware of that at all. It's good to know. Tell me how Nexus originated itself to be in a fund granting or grant making position early on with those organizations. I know the organizations. I know ADC, I know LEDC. They were on the program last week, as a matter of fact. And I know NEON, Northside Economic Development, but I didn't have that awareness of the connection you had, that Nexus had, to all of those. So talk about that.
Yeah, we started as a pilot, a funding pilot, one of 5 from around that was established around the country. And we prior to Nexus being Nexus Community Partners, we were Payne Lake Community Partners.
Okay.
And the name is the focus, right? Lake Street in South Minneapolis, Payne Avenue, and over on the east side of St. Paul. And it really was to invest in the kind of emerging drive energy that was happening along those corridors.
Okay.
And so large funders were pooling resources into this organization, and then we get those dollars out. Again, we tended to though have a more mainstream community development kind of framework. It was later then that we established 2 other things. One, in addition to the east side of St. Paul and South Minneapolis, we established some support in North Minneapolis.
Okay.
And that came through an interesting experience that I'll speak to.
Sure.
But we were always an asset and wealth building organization from the beginning. When I came on board, we really began to weave this idea of culture and community engagement into all of the asset and wealth building work that we were doing. So I went out and spent some time with folks like Elder Atum, talking with her, talking with the folks at Hope, talking to the folks at Casa de Esperanza, and really began to think and hear that in cultural communities, you don't have superstars. You have folks that come together who have discussions around what's important in their communities. And they figure out, and that might happen at the kitchen table, it might happen downstairs in the church, but there's an engagement process. And so we came back, lifted up all of our asset and wealth building work, slid community engagement under, and lowered it back down. So that everything that we do has a community engagement element to it. So we've always been asset and wealth building, but this community engagement and cultural piece was stronger. In terms of moving into North Minneapolis, and around 2008, I had the honor of spending some time with Jeffrey Canada out in Harlem, visiting the Harlem Children's Zone. And I came back and did a presentation in North Minneapolis about what I saw out there that I thought might be transferable skills, strategies to North Minneapolis, obviously customized to environment.
Right.
And a bunch of folks got excited about it. And then Nexus, again, we put $20,000 up to get the first coordinator, the organizers. That ended up being the Northside Achievement Zone.
Okay.
And that took us into North Minneapolis. And then we started to do grant making in North Minneapolis as well.
What's your personal background? How do you come to this work? What's your story?
I grew up in Milwaukee, and I don't know if I shared, but both parents, a strong family. I mean, really strong. Both my parents transitioned to ancestorhood when I was young. My mother when I was 9, my father when I was 13. There were 5 of us. The oldest was 21, 18, 15. I was 9, and I had a 7-year-old younger brother. And my mother's call to us was to never be broken apart. And so my 18-year-old sister raised us. But in that environment, the males of the family took to the streets and hustling and doing whatever we could to bring money in. And around 13, I joined a gang, and that took me in all kinds of directions. And at the age of 21, I found myself facing 85 years in the penitentiary.
Whoa.
I ended up getting sentenced to a maximum security prison for the sentence was for 7 years. And it was in there that I got my GED. And resisted doing that. And then was told that the scores on the GED qualified me for the college program that was being offered in there. I resisted that. And literally told the instructor who encouraged me to apply for the college program that college was for smart, rich white people, not for folks like me. And with some further encouragement and pushing, I said to her, you know, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll take 2 classes, and when I take them, guess what you're going to do? You're going to leave me alone after that. I took 2 classes and did really well, but that wasn't what changed. What changed me was I fell in love with learning. I figured out that it wasn't so much about what I was learning, but that I knew how to learn. And so I ended up passing up going to a medium security prison because the college program was there. I earned my associate's degree while in prison, and then transferred out to a 4-year college. Worked, finished that, and then operated as a academic advisor for a while, and then at one point said, you know, I hear the calling, and something bigger and greater is calling, and I got to respond to it. And I took everything that I had and packed it up and headed to Minnesota. Didn't know anybody at the time. Trailer broke down on me on the highway. I spent my first 3 or 4 days wrapped up in a rug on the floor, and then called home to say, you know, I'm okay. And then found out that I had a cousin that had just recently moved here, Resma Mena. And we connected up. I got a job working with young people, and then moved to the organization that I was with for 15 years, Freeport West. My entry there was with a program working with young males coming out of prison, and eventually turned it into the first culturally specific family reunification and preservation program for young Black males and their families in the state of Minnesota.
Wow.
And worked my way up from, I mean, it was a long story, but I worked my way up from there to executive director and spent some time there. And it was there that I think some of the shaping of my mind around the work that I do now occurred. When I think about the work that needed to be done or that we were engaged in, I walked the streets. And so I walked Franklin and Chicago, and I could hear, not literally, but I could hear the conversations about what was important. Even though we were doing good work, had the largest county grant and so forth, I wasn't seeing the kind of change that I would hope to see in the neighborhood. And a big variable was that even though people were doing work to change and transform themselves, their environments were controlled by somebody else. And so a building, a house that you were connected to, you can walk past it one day and it was there, and come back the next day and it was gone. No sense of your connectivity to place and space because it was controlled by others. And it was then that I said, you know, I've been in kind of the human services space for a long time, and I made the decision to kind of back out, keep my eye on the sparrow, circle around, and come back through another angle. And that was through community and economic development. And so it's been a long story. I ended up getting a fellowship, went to Harvard, did a master's degree at Harvard, came back with a lot of ideas around how to do things differently. I went out there with this idea of an economic development strategy for the Black community that is not built solely on race, but based on cultural tenets and values. I knew that the community development, economic development field, you could count on one hand the number of our people that were involved in it, and I knew all of them. And then there was, again, this idea of rumbling in my head around what is the relationship between community engagement and community development. And so I ended up doing some traveling around the country. I went to Africa, just really searching, and came back and was asked to help this organization, Payne Lake Community Partners, move to its next level. And in many ways applied the learnings and the insights and the interest that I had into a plan. And then they said, you know, it looks good, so who's going to do it? And they hired me on back then.
What a story. What a wonderful story. And so I always ask my friends about your Africa experience. Where did you go? What did you do? What did you learn? And how does that show up in who you are and what you're doing today?
Yeah, I spent about 2 weeks in Kenya. My plan was to do Kenya, Uganda, and was Kenya, Uganda, and one other. It'll come to me, Al. But I never got out of Kenya.
Okay.
The folks wrapped around me and cared for me so well. They told me go home, get all my stuff, bring it back. Yeah, right. I mean, really, I stayed with a family in the rural area, and then we traveled into Nairobi. But it was a very powerful experience for me. While I was there, I met everyone. I met folks from government officials that I got a chance to spend time with, all the way down to programs that were working with young women who had been working the streets. And this program was taking them off the streets and helping them to develop sewing skills. And then they sew uniforms for the schools, for the children. So a range of folks, again, they introduced me to heads of universities. And I mean, they just took me in and really, really embraced me. The thing that was connected to that experience that was already sitting in my head was, you know, I mentioned a moment ago that I was interested in an economic development strategy for the Black community that is not based solely on race, but on cultural values and tenets. And I truly believe that exists in us. That culture is not an aesthetic, right? Culture is a knowledge system. Culture is a set of values. It is a way of knowing and a way of being, and it is the way of scribing and governing and guiding the way that we live our lives. And so I always believe that, you know, some of the things that played themselves out in our community were really signs and symbols of deep cultural values, whether it's how when we see something at a distance that involves us and we smile about it, it gives us a certain kind of feeling, or the opposite. Something happens and we say, oh man, I wish, do you know what I mean? I wish there's this innate kind of connectedness. And what I was interested in and what I was looking at over in Africa is, if you peel back the layers of what this country has taught us about ourselves, and has stripped away from us in terms of our culture and deep sense of identity and divinity, that there is something there, very, very powerful, and it is natural in us, and that part of the work is really about reconnecting with that. And so when I was in Africa for those organizations, I would ask questions before you had bylaws and principles that made you a formal institution. What was it? that held you together? What was it that allowed you to say that mine won't succeed if yours don't succeed? What was it that says that the only way for me to lift mine up is to make sure that yours is being lifted up? What is that? And it was really, again, to come back and to try to see with a different lens, what are the tenets of this deeper sense of connectedness and collectiveness that we hold in us? And being in Africa and having that experience at a deep visceral level reassured me that there was something that was still here too, that we need to spend time cultivating, that we need to spend time unpacking. And I had thought this through in this sense, Al, that as I watched back even in the Payne Lake Community Partners days, as cultural communities arrived in this state and in this region and tried to take advantage of the market, they would take culture, bring it to the market, fuse it through, come out on the other side with strategies and values that may have been tainted by market, but still sit in culture. For us, what we were doing was coming to it with race. And race doesn't teach you your values, culture does. And so we go to market and come out on the other side and be more confused than when we went in, right? So the idea is how do you steep us in culture and away from this idea, this category of race, and allow us to begin to look at practices that are very obvious in our community that allow us to thrive.
I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation. My guest is Repa Mekha. He's the leader at Nexus Community Partners. Bruce Henry is also here. Bruce, as he was speaking, I wanted to turn to you and say, sing that song again as you would just that verse. I think it fits, or whatever else might be on your mind, but say it musically. I'll let you improvise and flow.
The song Africa Cries. I think I'll sing another one for you.
Go ahead.
And this is one from off of my CD Connections. The lyrics are by way of the great Langston Hughes, so I had a lot of help with this. I am the darker brother they send me to eat in the kitchen when company comes. But I laugh, yeah, and I eat well, and I grow strong, and I grow strong. I grow strong. Tomorrow I'll be at the table when company comes, and nobody will dare say to me no. Eat in the kitchen then, eat in the kitchen then. Besides, they'll see how beautiful I am, and they will be ashamed. I too sing America, I too sing America. I am the darker brother, I too sing America, I too sing America.
Amazing, Bruce Henry. Thank you, man. Thank you. Right on top, right on time, brother Repa Mekha. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always deeply moved when I hear our voices, because they hold this kind of parallel, multiple kind of messaging that, you know. So in that short piece, I heard values, principles. I heard practices about ways of being, right? How you show up, the spirit in which you show up. I heard the value of story, the story, and the narrative. I also heard in it that this message around authoring, that you can author. You can author what it is that you want to see. You can re-author what it is that you want to be. That all of that was bundled up, and our sensitivities around this stuff, and hearing it, it's not just a song. It's not just a beautiful song. It's a message. It's a message that is full of meaning at multiple levels, right? And so music like that, two songs tell you a piece of history in a way that a conversation might take an hour and a half to, to convey. And so
it's so true. When I went to Cuba, I had the honor to go to Cuba, and I was working with this wonderful choir, one of the best choirs in the world, and they were singing Negro spirituals. They sang them beautifully and intricately well. And then I just asked them, do you know the story? Do you know the story of our people? Do you know the story of how these songs were resistance songs, coded messages, etc.? And they did not know. They had no idea. And here I am. I'm literally surrounded by 100 voices who are crying because they didn't know our story. 90 miles away, and they did not know our story. And honest to God, the way they sang the song after they knew the story, it was transformative.
Repa, we're getting towards the end of the program. I want to take a couple of minutes to talk about your current initiatives. I think I read, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that you've been one of the people to help support in that spirit of philanthropy, directing resources to the community that were in response to the George Floyd crisis. If that's the case, share that. And I do know that you're on a new mission right now, a large mission to further the work for community building, economy building, development. If you have a word or two about what capabilities you're bringing to community right now, please share.
Yeah, I'll go back and then step forward on that. After the murder of George Floyd and the uprising, as we know, large amounts of resources came into the Twin Cities area, and to organizations that were doing frontline systems change, transformative work, but that didn't have the structures in place to disperse dollars and to manage that. And we were presented with an opportunity to partner with Black Visions Collective to transfer a significant amount of money, some millions, over to Nexus. And then a core team of our staff developed a community grants making committee that in 6 months got about $7.1 million out into the community.
Amazing.
In very short turnaround time. And out of that as well, I mentioned a little earlier, the establishment of the launch of the Minnesota Black Collective Foundation, the first Black established, Black-led community foundation in the state of Minnesota. And if you think about those three variables, Black established, Black-led, and community foundation, I venture to say, Bruce and Al, the first in the country. We are also a recipient of a $50 million trust fund to support Black wealth building in historic Black communities in the state of Minnesota, North Dakota, and South Dakota, with the kind of foundation pieces around entrepreneurship, home ownership, and education. But we also know that, we have a long history of trauma that has come alongside or within all our efforts to establish any kind of economic ground for ourselves. And so healing spaces and spaces of supporting each other are part of that work as well. It's in a design phase right now, and we'll launch, and those dollars go to individuals, different as well. and it will launch in the first half of 2023. And to support this work, we are also in 2023 launching a sabbatical program, and we're tentative about the language of program, tentative about the language of sabbatical itself because of the kind of connotations that it's had in this broader European context. But what it is a movement, is an idea. We acknowledge that the closer we get to seeing and experiencing the world that we want to see, the steeper the slope of resistance and white supremacy will be, right? And if we're asking folks to rise to that challenge and lean in, then we have to take care of them, right? We have to figure out ways to make sure people are healthy. And so at an individual level, an organizational level, a philanthropic level, and then a systems level, we are pushing care as an essential part.
And brother, we're out of time. That goes so quickly. What a wonderful conversation. I'll ask Station to give me a couple more seconds to thank you, brother Repa Mekha, leader at Nexus Community Partners, and to thank you, Bruce Henry. Bruce, when are you playing? Where?
Saturday night at the Dakota, downtown Minneapolis, 7 p.m. There are some tickets left for Christmas show.
There we go. I'm Al McFarlane. This is The Conversation. We'll see you next time. Take care.
Thank you, Al.
Hotel.